Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. Welcome to February. Yes, here we are. And January has been a long one for me this year. I swear to God, if someone hears me complain about the heat this summer, just smack me in the back of the head because as I get older, the colder is not working for me. It's been a rough, long January. But anyway, I'm still hopeful. And what I love is seeing more light in my day, right? We can already notice a difference, which is great. And I, of course, look forward to the spring flowers popping up. But hey, I actually like the month of February. We've got Heart Month, we've got Groundhog Day, we've got all kinds of fun stuff. Valentine's Day, my dad's birthday. My dad turns 88 this month. So lots of good stuff in February. And hey, here's something good. My guest this week, my pal, my podcast sponsor, Emily Hickox of Budget Through Life, is going to talk to us about important stuff, budgeting. You know that stuff. Worry, you're not worrying. She's going to help us take the worry, I should say, out of it. And Emily is someone who I love the way she talks about it because it's not boring and it's easy to understand, folks. So I know you're going to get something out of this conversation. So welcome and hello, Emily.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course, of course. I want to say thank you as I always do, but I like to thank you not in person, but kind of in person since we're seeing each other for being a sponsor of this podcast. It really does mean a lot. You and Gabby, now she joined this year. I'm so excited to have you both sponsoring the content that I do. And it means the world to me that thanks to you guys, in part, it's really great that you help me do this. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure, and I look forward to Thursdays. I refresh my app for my podcast, and I love listening to the new episodes. And I try to a little bit skip past the part about me because I turn red no matter how many times I hear it. If I listen to the podcast with my kids in the car, they'll be like, "Wait, don't skip it. It's about you, mommy." And so
Aw.
they like to listen to it, but that feeling when people are talking about you, you're like, well, just look, fast forward 30 seconds and get to these amazing speakers and guests that you have. Man, it's been just a wonderful few months of you know women and all that they're doing, and even just hearing you talk and your thoughts on the world. I just love every episode that comes out, so thank you for all of your creative genius.
Oh gosh. Now I'm not as uncomfortable. Tell me more. No, I'm just kidding. Now
you
let
don't want
me
to you don't want to hit the fast forward 30.
no, I gotta pause and hit it in slow mo. No, I will tell you, it has taken me away, and you don't need this lecture, I'm sure, but women are not as good at sitting in that praise or adulation or admiration or stuff that we deserve, and you deserve that good stuff. So I'm glad your kids are like, hey mom, wait, this is about you. But we do get uncomfortable, don't we? I mean, it
Yeah.
took me the longest time when I first did stand up years and years and years ago. It's been probably over 20 years. Like in the beginning, I oh my god, did I have a hard time listening to myself, and
Mhm.
even harder time looking at myself if I had a video. And I'll admit there's some I can listen to myself now. In fact, it's like, okay, this is going to sound really bad, but sometimes I will re-listen to some of my podcast conversations, not just to hear me, of course, although I don't mind hearing me, but no, to hear the conversation. So I'm good with that, but it is still harder for me to watch myself. That's probably because of self-image, putting on weight and all that stuff. And so it's still harder for me to look at myself on video, but I'm used to listening now. That I can kind of do. But like as women, we need to stand up more for ourselves and accept, but it is hard. I totally get that. And yeah, so I hear where you're coming from, but please listen to your kids and listen to you. Listen to your kids saying, "Mom, listen to you."
Yeah, well, and you know what I noticed, and I think this is a COVID symptom. I have a new job. One of my roles outside of Budget Through Life is I'm working in an office, and I have a boss who's like a real person that I see in real life. And this is the first time I've worked in an office in about 8 years and had a boss that I see through without a screen, without Skype that we used to have. And I never had a problem accepting praise and being told I did a good job. And when it's in person though, I just don't handle it as well. Simple little things like, oh, great job on payroll today. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Like, who am I? But if someone was to say it on, a Zoom call, I'd be like, oh, thank you. Like, it's a different experience in person.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get, and I can imagine the difference in dynamics too from going from the work situation that you were in to this. That's a huge transition. That's a big change. Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
for sure. I have to wear pants every day. Every day.
Now that's not cool, man.
It's not. Shoes with like dress socks. I ran out of dress socks today. That looked real funny. So
Oh man, that I do not miss that from my days at Blue Cross, like having to think the night before at least about, so I wouldn't have to deal with it in the morning. All right, what am I wearing tomorrow?
yeah.
What's clean, what's ironed, what looks good.
Yep. That's my one of my goals for 2025 is, and we're going to talk about goals today, so it's fitting. Is fitting is that my clothes in my closet just fit. That whatever I grab out, I just want it to fit. I don't care what the number on it is. I don't care the shape of it, the color. I just want anything I grab out at 6:15 to fit on my body and feel good enough to walk out the door. That's it.
Well, and that's an easy enough goal, right? You think, right?
Right? I think so. I think between budgeting for new clothes, larger clothes, and trying to lose a few pounds, I think I'll get into all the clothes in the closet.
Well, you've done a great job. And I should say, for folks who aren't watching on YouTube, go check out YouTube. Emily has on a lovely red sweater, and go red in February for Heart Month, especially Women's Heart Month. So I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but if not, I love that you're wearing a red sweater tonight.
Thanks. I needed a bright color. I was having a little bit of a dreary day and I had a black sweater on. I said, you know what? This first of all, it's going to blend in with my chair. And that's always a problem. And I just felt like I needed a pop today.
Yeah.
And it's working.
It's perfect. It's a power color. And I want to get into, as you mentioned, like change and habits in the new year and all that stuff. But along those lines, real quick, it's interesting that our winter wardrobe, a lot of it is so much of the dark because I presented a couple weeks ago to a group of, it was an over 60 social club at the Covenant Presbyterian Church in Scranton. And I'm debating on and off the night before, what should I wear? What should I wear? And I have a lot of black. I have a lot of darker colors. And it's like, oh gosh, but I'm doing laughter, and Laugh to Live, my business logo is like this really bright orange and green. And I'm like, I honestly don't have a lot of like lighter and brighter colors for
Yeah.
winter. And I think I ended up wearing I think I went with like a darker top, maybe even a brown top or something. I'm like, that's the best I could do. I think was like a tan top. I instead of black. That is the best I could do. But hey, we do our best. And the importance is what we give out, what we emanate and radiate. So the clothes are just part of it. But you referenced before. Let's talk about in January, a lot of my guests that I had on were people who talked a lot about addressing issues that people look into in the beginning of the year. And a lot of what we said, Mickey and Emily, we talked nutrition, and Elizabeth, the health coach, or excuse me, life wellness coach, and then Thea about curiosity and building relationships, and then Gab and Gab talked about, she's a trauma informed life coach. So we talked a lot about change, which of course we said the important thing to remember is just because it's big right now at the beginning of the year in the media, people talking about, doesn't mean that you have to do it now, or that if you start now and you don't do so well and you stop, oh well, that's it. You can start back up again. You could take a break and start, again next month. So let's talk about folks who may have started off going, all right, I'm going to cut down on unnecessary spending, or I'm not going to spend as much money dining out or buying coffee out, all that stuff. Let's say it's the beginning of February, which research shows us by now a lot of people have already abandoned New Year's resolutions, if we want to call them that, or goals in the new year. So from your perspective, helping people, talk to us about what you would advise or what you'd suggest from your world.
Sure. So I do call in my personal life, I do call them New Year's resolutions. I like that. I've just always been one of those people that I like fresh starts. I like having something to work towards. So personally for me, setting New Year's goals is very beneficial. Doesn't mean I always achieve them, but it does put me in a really good mindset. But with financial goals, this gets a little bit tricky. And I certainly have some. I have financial goals for this year. But what makes financial goals really hard as New Year's resolutions is that this is a really expensive time to be setting new goals. So
Mm.
you've got, November and December are people's typical biggest spending months. If you were to lay out your expenses for the whole year, and I do this with people, we lay out everything they've spent and you divide it by 12 and you're like, oh, that's not so bad. That's okay. But if you don't divide it by 12 and you do the actual math of where all these expenses fell, the majority of them are going to be in November and December. And then you have this awful hit in January if you did any holiday spending on credit or travel on credit. So the typical American has around ten to $12,000 of debt. That means that they're going into the new year with credit card debt. So it's not like they can just say, "Oh, I'm going to start the new year fresh and I'm not going to have a $2,000 credit card bill." No, you are. You're going to start the new year and you're going to have a $2,000 credit card bill. That's going to happen. So we have to take that into consideration. Is yes, I can have these goals, these overarching goals that I want for, for say 2025, but January might be a really scary time to get started. Like you might have some cleanup to do before that. So February, this week might be the week where you're like, okay, I've dug out from the holidays, or there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I feel like I can do this now. This is maybe a better time. Or all these ideas that I had in January, I was failing at them because I had this other stuff from November and December that I forgot was going to be really looming over me. So when I talk about setting financial goals and really just budgeting in general, I always say I don't want people to think about budgeting as a diet. I don't want them to think about it as a restrictive lifestyle that's temporary. I want them to think about it as a permanent lifestyle that is a better way of living and that is for the long run. So I'll say, okay, when is the best time to start a diet? And everybody says Monday, right? Monday. We're going to start the diet on Monday. And I say, okay, you're going to start your budget on a Thursday. I don't care what day it is, but don't align it with when you like recalculate your Weight Watchers points. It's got to be different. So we're at a Thursday right now. This is a great day to start your budget.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Elizabeth, the wellness coach, made the same point because she said that's where we get tripped up a lot, where people like, okay, I won't eat, sweets during the week or whatever. And it's like, maybe it's a Wednesday and it's like, oh, well, I had that donut. Guess I'll, start over on Monday. And she's like, well, what about those days in between? There's no reason to say that. You could say, no, I'll start back on it tomorrow. And really, I think a lot of it, like, I don't know, Weight Watchers points how they maybe that is a certain like calendar week or whatever, but like so much of it is mindset with some of our habits, right? That we're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's the start on a Monday, but it's like, so what? All those days in between, you're just like, screw it, I'll just do whatever. Now, granted,
Yep.
I am no example of anything because I'm always failing in that department. But I mean, but why wait, right? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
get started sooner.
Yeah, and realizing too that like, okay, so let's say you set yourself a goal, you were going to save $200 a month this year. Let's set a goal like that. And you're 1 month in and you only set aside $125. That's not failure. You saved, and the act of saving is so hard. I mean, this is actually something that's very, very hard for people in our society to do because we didn't grow up in a generation that did it very well. So it's okay to say, you know what, I didn't save as much, but I saved. So one of the strategies when you're reevaluating where you are today in February with the goals you set in January is to say, did I at least do it? Did I do something? Okay, my goal is to pay off my credit card bill. Maybe I only paid the minimum for the month because that's all I could come up with. But I did it. And just the act of doing it keeps your credit score in the positive. It's reducing some interest that you're going to owe. So give yourself grace and give yourself credit for the things that you did do. And that's what's nice about, kind of along the same lines of the donut. Okay, I ate the donut today, but that doesn't mean I'm going to have cake for dinner. that does sound lovely, but you don't want to do that.
Yes.
It does, right? That was my son's birthday was just a few weeks ago, and I did eat cake for dinner a few times, but I put it in the Weight Watchers app. Just full disclosure.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. Yeah, no, I mean, you're making, you make a great point though about acknowledging what you did do, because you're absolutely right. That is not failure. And I think that's where a lot of us do get tripped up, or I should say a lot of people do, where it's like, oh, I failed. No, you didn't. Like you said, you saved. And that's kind of been my approach, especially the past I don't know, I guess I'd say even 10 months to a year about exercise, because I've had some health issues and I'm not running, but I'm walking. And so there are days when I'm like, okay, something is better than nothing. In fact, it's interesting. Well, I find it interesting for me that because of recently my issues where I'm concerned, I had some heart tests and things. Because I can't run, I'm almost like now more focused on walking, where like the past 3 days in a row, I walked for over 50 minutes each day. And where there were some weeks where I was like, oh, 20 minutes is better than nothing. Now, because I am worried that because I can't run, I'm like, well, I'm going to make sure at least that I can walk and walk on an incline and blah, blah, blah. But my philosophy some days is truly, it's better than nothing, than no movement at all. The one day it was like 20-minute little dance party. I turned on YouTube and I found some kind of dance routine. Of course, I gotta tell you, the next day I was like, holy crap, that was worse than walking, because who the hell do I think? I'm no fly girl. Why was I trying to dance? But yeah, it's like some movement is better than none. And I imagine it's now, granted, you can't do that all the time. Like especially if you're trying to reach a bigger goal, but
Right.
to applaud what you've done, especially with saving, like you said, it is difficult. And I think unfortunately, when we say we failed, then it makes it almost like sometimes some of us use it as an excuse, like, well, I guess I just can't do this.
Yeah.
Or we feel bad about ourselves. So on top of not reaching this particular goal, not saying failing, but not reaching a goal, then we beat ourselves up, which makes it to me so much messier and so much harder to move forward. And that's just not good.
It is, and we really do. We are horrible to ourselves. It's something that I've been doing a lot of research on and discussing with colleagues about. Um, what what you want to do is you got to step back and you got to say, the things I'm saying to myself right now, would I say that to my friend, to my sister, to my mother? Would I say that to somebody I was coaching, somebody that I was trying to help? And the answer is always going to be no. Pretty much, if you say something that makes yourself feel bad and you ask yourself, would you say that to someone else? The answer is going to be no. And when you change that mindset, we talk a lot about mindset. You talk with all your guests, and it's fantastic because we have to do that. We have to be thinking differently. All of a sudden, well, we did do a good job. We did a really good job. It was a lot better than we did yesterday. So let me ask you a question, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
When you get the walking in, which is fantastic, are you doing it to check a box? Like, why is the walking important to you?
No, for me, that's one area where I can definitely tell you it's not checking a box. I mean, ultimately it does check boxes, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
why I'm doing it. So for me, and you know me, so you know that I used to do like run walk. I was never a fast rep, but so a lot of my ego and pride was in that. As I sit here and I look at my medals, I have 2 marathon medals, I have 12 half marathon medals, I have multiple 5K bibs. So that was a huge part of my life. And I did that for my own sanity. I did it for my mental health. It was meditative. I did it for accomplishment. So many things that right now I'll actually get sad talking about it, only because I miss it. So it's kind of hurting me right now. That over the past year or so, I noticed, hey, I was doing like a 5-minute run and then a 1-minute walk or like whatever. I'm like, now it's like maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and I'm noticing some health issues. So I'm like, oh crap. So now for me, the walking is a form of exercise, because I know I need a form of exercise. So it's not to check a box, but it's for my physical health. it's absolutely for my mental health. Although I will tell you, for me, or excuse me, walking is just more boring for me. That like it's just
Yeah.
it is like by myself. Like walking is great with a friend. Like when I walk with someone, it's fantastic because I see all kinds. I check boxes, but like literally like check important boxes like talking to a friend, which is like therapy, being especially for walking outside. Like Sunday, I walked outside on a trail with one of my friends for an hour and 10 minutes. Yesterday morning, we were out, and I think it was like 28 degrees or 30, but the sun was out. My friend Marie, we walked at Naog. So we're outdoors, check. We're having a great conversation, check. And we're getting movement, exercise. So that is so important. So yeah, it's mental health, it's physical health, and I mean, I've learned this a while ago that I have very poor eating habits that I freely admit. So, and as I'm sitting here with my rosé, that I have not given up alcohol like a lot of people I know have, that I'm proud of, that do that. So those areas, I don't want to say fail, but I need to do so much better in, and I know those are the ones that matter more when it comes to weight loss. So I'm not going to say that I do the walking at all for that, because I need to do more nutrition to lose weight, but overall sense of well-being. And I'm sorry, this is a really long answer to just say, for me, it's always been important. No, let me back that up. It's been important the last 20 or some years. When I was young, I was not into it at all. And I'm embarrassed to say I took my one PE class at Penn State was a walking class. And when I graduated in 93, like in my 20s, I wasn't super active. I would never have even bothered paying attention to how many days I did anything. Like I just didn't. And I didn't get into running until I was maybe 30 or 31. So the past 22 years, maybe, and I at a point now where I actually log. It's one of the few things I actually pay attention to. I put on my calendar every day, 35 minutes Planet Fitness, or outside walk 3.2 miles, whatever. So yeah, so I hope that rambling answered your question. I'm sorry.
The rambling was exactly what I was looking for. It honestly didn't matter what you said. The point is that you have a why. You're not walking just to tell people you walked. You're walking for you. You're walking for a bigger purpose. You're walking for bigger goals than just how many steps you can take. You're walking for your health, your physical health, your mental health. You have a why. And I want to hear people ramble about their why when it comes to their financial goals. I want them to treat it the same way. And when you can do that, when you can keep your why in mind, and I'm sure a lot of women and people listening have heard, find your why, start with why, so many things about why. There's a reason you hear that a lot, because it matters and it helps you stay on track or get back on track or appreciate the little wins along the way. And I could ramble for probably an hour about my why with my financial goals. I have this like crazy dream of buying my kids houses one day. Like buy not taking their houses from them, but buying houses for them. I realize how that sounds, but
I want to swoop in and kick them out.
I try to be a good mom. I am going to walk into their homes and throw my jacket and shoes all over the floor. I am probably going to clog all of their toilets. Like I'm going to destroy these houses, but I also would love to buy them, or at least give them money for a down payment as wedding presents, or whatever. I would love them to go to college without debt. I have so many whys. My whys don't only revolve around my children. My whys revolve around this lake house I dream of, and that's for me. And they can come on weekends I approve, and that's it. But finding your why is really important, and being really specific about it. So let's say you had this goal in January and you wanted to be debt free, and all of a sudden it's February. You've barely paid down any debt. You haven't made any extra principal payments on your mortgage if that was part of your goal. Well, let's sit back and say, why haven't I done that? Why haven't I prioritized it? Is it because I'm a terrible person? No, definitely not. It's because something else became more important. Something else became more of a priority. So let's sit back and criticize ourselves just a little bit and say, was that the right move? Was that last minute girls trip I planned, was that the right priority versus the goals that I set? And maybe it was, and that's okay. But having those conversations with yourself and ideally writing them down. I have a journal I type out of, where I am with things and where I want to
Of
be.
course you do.
Of course I do. Now that one, I will say that one is mostly nutrition related. Financial goals, that's all spreadsheet. I mean, that's just 17 tabs of an Excel workbook.
Oy, oy, oy.
But I know it's scary. And somehow they all talk to each other. I don't know.
I'm envious of your organization skills.
It's like one of my things I got going for me. I'll take it. But really really figuring out what's your why. And then I like doing this exercise where I take some time to really sit and imagine it. When my husband and I, when we first went on our debt-free journey many moons ago, we had these date nights, these financial date nights, and we still do them, not as frequently, but we do them, and every week we get together, kind of see where we were with the budget, how are we doing with the debt payoff, and we would just dream, and we would just talk about what is life going to look like and feel like when we're debt free. And we're like, this is maybe never going to happen, but we kept doing it. And after probably 3 or 4 months of doing this every single week, we started to believe it. We were like, oh no, like this is a thing and this is going to feel really, really good. So I do that now. One of my big goals is to not have a mortgage at a certain age, which I won't share because then you're all going to do math and realize I'm turning 40 really, really soon. But
Baby, she's a
right.
baby.
Oh, my body disagrees. But I sit there and I'm like, what is it going to feel like when I don't have this mortgage payment? When I can take that money and just put it towards the trips we want to take, or the charities we want to support. There's things that I know we support to the extent we're able, but I want to do so much more. So really imagining that, I'm sure everybody listening has imagined what they would do if they won the lottery, right? Everyone has imagined what they would do. Being debt free really is like winning the lottery. What would you do if you didn't have a credit card payment, if you didn't have a car payment, you didn't have a house payment? We have so many payments. And then Netflix is going up again. What's up with that? So
Oh, is it going up again? Oh, jeepers.
oh, that's what the email said. I didn't I deleted it. I was like, yeah, I'm not surviving without it. So whatever it is, it is.
Priorities, and you can pick them, right? That's it. Yeah.
You can. I don't, we've talked before. I don't really believe in needs versus wants. I believe in really digging into what's important to you, where are your values, what are you going to prioritize, and maybe you have the wrong goals set. It's possible that, paying off that one thing you thought was the goal isn't the thing. Maybe there's something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that, I mean, and that makes perfect sense. Yeah, talking about what would you do if you win the lottery? I'm sure a lot of us do think about that, but you're right. When it, paying off your debt, that's what it would look like. I mean, because so many of us are tied to that debt. And I mean, I know, just like making my one this week, my car loan payment, and just seeing it, it's kind of, now again, I have work to do with my money too. And as I'm like, I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like trying to get motivated, not trying, but I feel motivated, inspired to like really have to buckle down, and I'm just not good with it. I know that. But it is cool to see when you're paying things down, like seeing my car loan. I think it's been about a year in September. Now that's after having leased it for 3 years, but the price was right for buying it, so if it's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 year, loan or whatever, but having it go from whatever it was, like 10 or 11,000, and seeing 8,000. So I was like, wow, it's going down. So it is nice
Yeah.
to see making progress a little bit. That feels good. At least that has a better feeling for me than my credit cards, because the credit cards are going to continue, some of them, to go up, whereas
Right.
the car loan is not going to. Like, it's got a certain number of payments and then it's done. I'm not going to add anything onto that.
That is such a nice feeling. I do like that feeling. And when you have goals like that, you also have to make it really hard to quit. So how do you do that? How do you make it hard to quit on a goal? We're in February. All the things we said we were going to do in January are looking so much harder now that we're a month into this. It's December feels like a lifetime away, but it's not. It's going to come right around. So how do we get to December and feel like we can look back and say we did the best we could. We really did. And one of the ways to make it hard to quit your financial goals is to make them automatic. So I think you and I have talked before about automatic savings and putting things on auto pay so that you don't miss payments, especially when it comes to minimums on your credit card. Because if you miss your minimum payments, if you miss the due date, it's very significantly impacting your credit score. So we don't want to miss payments. Even if we can't pay the whole statement balance, let's at least pay those minimums on time. So putting that on automatic payments, great. But if you have a savings goal, you can make that automatic. You can make it so that that money just automatically goes, like as soon as you get paid, it's being transferred into a savings account. And you want to do that. You want to transfer it into another account. You don't want to be able to touch it every minute of the day. I actually have my savings accounts are in a different bank than my checking accounts because I need it to be hard to access that money. I need it to take 3 to 5 days. I need to have to log into another app. I need that kind of boundary because as much as I love my budget, at heart I'm still a spender. So I need to keep that in check. And one of the ways I do that is keeping those accounts separate and making that transfer from checking to savings automatic. Another goal I had this year, I have two things that I'm working on simultaneously. One is to really diving into more of the investing world on my own, and then paying down the mortgage. So I set those things up so that automatically this money comes out of my account to go to investing and automatically comes out to pay extra principal on my mortgage. It's not a ton of money, but it's a little bit. And because it's automatic, I'm going to have to jump through hoops to make it stop, right? I'm going to have to get on my computer or my phone and log into something and tell it to stop. And in this world, that's hoops, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Right?
Believe me, I know this struggle is real. I cannot tell you how many different things I'm like, oh, I have to log back in, and
Uh-huh.
weeks go by, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh well, that's not getting done.
Yeah, turn off Face ID and see what happens then. Then you really
Mm,
don't want to log into anything.
oh, geez.
So make it hard on yourself. It's hard for me to quit. So now when I look at my budget, I'm like, oh, well, those two things are going to happen no matter what because I set them up to happen. And I don't want to have to make phone calls or go on websites and change things and send emails. No, like I'm just going to not go out to eat 2 times this month and make sure those bills get paid. So, that it sounds kind of like a punishment, like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to do that. But it's again sitting back and saying, why? What do I want? Imagining what life looks like in December, imagining what life looks like in 2030, in whatever year your goal might be in. Going through those exercises is worth it because all of a sudden you think about things a lot differently, and you'll get to December, and even if your goal is $25 a month of savings, whatever it might be, you're going to feel really good when you get to December and realize you did it. And then you're going to say, wait, I survived. I'm doing 50 in 2026, right? We're going to make the goal higher. So it's all about just building that confidence, that habit.
Let me ask you, and this is, I know this is not your field of expertise area. This is just me, one gal asking another gal a question. You talked about investment and, one of your goals, investment, and then, about your mortgage. But what are your thoughts? And if you don't want to get into it, because I'm not asking you as a professional that you're knowledgeable about this, you may or may not, because I am not. What is your opinion or thoughts about Bitcoin?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
I have no interest in it.
Okay.
Um, I'm also I'm not conservative in the way I invest, meaning I invest pretty aggressively in the market because as much as I hate that I'm turning 40, I do understand that I'm still young, so I have time to lose money too. So I do invest pretty aggressively. but not aggressively to the point of new and unique things. So I don't invest in single stocks. I don't invest in any sort of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin thing. I do just stick to the traditional market. I do it based on history, on the longevity of the return, and I don't have the money to mess around with. I have just enough money to healthily invest for the big goals that I have revolving around, mostly around my children and their education, and the lake house. That is a real thing I want. So I don't live close enough to the lake. I need to be closer. So I don't I have I don't think that the risk is worth the potential reward there. I also have, my training and my experience is rooted in Dave Ramsey's financial principles. And that's something that I really learned from going through those courses and that training, is that we stick to the market, and very specifically, he does give a lot of guidance on how to invest. I have followed that guidance for 10, 11 years now, and I can say I regret nothing. It has definitely served me well.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think maybe I'd feel differently if I had a little bit extra disposable income to play with. And especially when it comes to single stocks, I know my kids have talked about, they just got their first investment accounts, and
Oh,
they
good.
they asked if they could just buy Apple. I said no. You will buy
No.
all the things. So that's been, my advice to my 10-year-old is the same as here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those, and like I like your point about like if you had that extra money, sure, you could see like, because we don't know. I guess there isn't a real
Yeah.
history with it. So we don't know what it's gonna do. But like, I go from reading things like it's, like, oh, people are nuts doing this. And then you see other stories about like, these billionaires, because of course they're billionaires, so they can afford
Right.
to lose a million or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, and then I start thinking, should I be buying Bitcoin? And I sure as hell don't have any extra income. But I was curious about your thoughts about that. So, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing you want to think about is, you don't want to have to, when it comes to any of your financial goals, right? You ultimately don't want them to be a major stressor on you. You want them to start to feel really good. So, the walks you take, some of them may be boring if you're alone, but you still see the good that comes from them, right? So you want to make sure that you can always see the good that's coming from it. And with the market, that good is just a little bit more predictable. I know we can speculate of what's going to happen next, but we don't worry about this with the market. We worry about this. We worry. And oh, I realize people can't see me, but I'm making hand motions that we don't worry about the sharp ups and downs in the short term. We worry about the long term and the
She's doing like an EKG or like a
yes.
porpoise swimming in the water coming up and
That's perfect. This is exactly what I'm doing. So really thinking, we're worried about long term. That's what we're looking at. So what is the 5 year? What's the 10 year? We're not worried about the 1 month or the 2 month. And you don't want to put yourself in any situation where, let's say you set something up automatic. You have this goal of saving, and we'll stick with saving because it's just an easy topic, and you're going to make it automatic, and you don't want to worry about what that money is doing when you're trying to first really tackle budgeting, and you have big financial goals, and not just fun goals, maybe serious goals like, I need to pay down this debt, or I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble here. You don't want to be worrying about what is that money doing. You want to know that that money is going exactly where it needs to go, and that it's safe, or at least relatively safe. So that's why high yield savings accounts are a good idea. Even just a traditional savings account, just having that money when you're on this journey be somewhere nice and safe, and that you're not up at night worrying about, oh man, that $300 that I transferred, what's it doing? We don't want to put it in anything like that.
yeah. And that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Um, Before I was gonna say, I just had one more like kind of topic that I wanted to talk to you about, but I don't want to shift gears. Did you want to wrap up anything that we were talking about here?
I think I'm good. I really just wanted to stress that, I get that it's February, and January was about 475 days long
It
for
felt
most
like
of
it, yeah.
us.
For sure.
It's just been it is always, it's not just this year, it's not just the cold, it is always this long. And I think part of the reason that it feels this long is because we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make January like the best month we can, and we're gonna knock it all out of the park. And just know that if you're not knocking it out of the park right now, you are not alone. This is, reaching your goals is not easy. If it was, we wouldn't have 7 weeks of podcasts talking about goals,
Yeah, right.
right?
Yeah. I think it's also hard in January though, because we're kind of, I'll use the word hangover from
Yep,
all the joy of December, right? I
the
mean,
joy.
like so much the joy, yeah, and joy can be in parentheses or quotes, whatever, but with the sarcastic emoji. But no, but seriously, there's a lot of pressure to experience joy. Let's put it that way, right? A lot of like gift giving and parties and sugar and alcohol and like busyness and all kinds of stuff. So for some people, they're just trying to like, whew, wow, that was a lot. And then in January, you're like, okay, now what? You're taking the decorations down, or you're like, so it is a hard month. But yeah, and then the goals on top of that, it's a lot. So I love the positive message you're saying, which is perfect. The only other like the topic that I had in my mind, or the question, and I think we talked a little real briefly before I hit the record button, and this is not something we need to get dive too deep into, but I think again it goes to your knowledge and expertise of budgeting. So I know, I believe you had said it, or I've read it too, that like medical debt is like one of the number one reasons people go bankrupt or they have bankruptcy. And I know that, I was told by somebody that, Biden signed in, or I think he signed in, that like basically your credit score cannot be poorly impacted because of what you owe with medical bills. And medical bills are really high. And this is something me personally I care about now. That's why I'm kind of bringing it up, just because before I mentioned to you before I hit the record button, most of my life, knock on wood, I was healthy. I didn't take medicines. I didn't have surgeries other than when I was 6 weeks old. My parents had to take me back like I'm a used car. They had to take me back. Her wheel's broken. They had to take me to the hospital because I had a pyloric stenosis. So they did have to do surgery. But other than that surgery, I have not been back. I've not had children. So I haven't used the healthcare system. And now here I am at 53, and I'm having some issues. I'm concerned about, my heart, concerned about my thyroid, endocrinology, all these different bills. And I will admit, last year, as in just a couple months ago, I was looking at some of these bills, some which I'm actually fighting with Geisinger, because they're kind of unfair surgical facility fee for a basic dermatology appointment. Like we're talking a $700 bill that should be flat out 50. Anyway, I'm working on that. So, but I got very anxious. And to your point before about like anxiety, and this has nothing to do with goals, because I certainly didn't have the goal with Geisinger in mind. Like, how can I help pay their buildings off? Um, I was very stressed. And now I did make some changes because, again, I'm trying to look at it from what's in my control. And I buy my healthcare off the marketplace. And I got a plan that cost me a little more per month, not a lot more, but a little more per month premium, but a lower deductible. So I went from having like a $4,000 deductible to like a 2,500. Now, of course, my max out of pocket is still like 6 or 7. So yeah, I could still spend a lot, but I took a new approach. So we talk about mindset. My mindset was, Janine, you've been fortunate, but now you're starting to have lightheadedness, shortness of breath, perhaps circulation issues, thyroid issues. I am too young to be old, so I'm not going to just go, well, I guess this is it. I clearly am not going to do that. So I'm of the mindset now where I'm like, you know what? If I have to spend the whole deductible or even a little bit more, I'm going to do that. So I'm seeing those bills and I'm not freaking out. But now it stands at like 2,200, whatever. And I'm barely like paying attention to it. That's my mindset. Like, I'm going to give you what I can afford. Here's 50
Yeah.
bucks. Here's 75. I'll do it as I can. And with all of that said, I have a mindset shift, because I'm just like, you know what? I'll pay it as I can.
Yep.
But what would you advise people? Because, and I'll say one more thing. I'm like this about my health, and I shake my head when I see some of my friends who've paid more for their pets. I can't imagine. And I'm not like, you're laughing and stuff, but like and from a serious note, I don't know how people do it. I genuinely don't, because I'm like worried about investing a couple thousand into my health. I'm a human being, and I'm still one of those oddballs who thinks that human life is more valuable than pet life. I know, please don't tell anyone. Shh. But and there are people who pay thousands for their pets. So I don't know what the hell my question is in all of this, but how do you factor this in? Like, is it just
Yeah.
like any other thing that you're just like, okay, I just have to budget?
Yes and no. So actually the approach you're taking and the mindset that you have is exactly what you should be doing. It is true that it can't affect your credit. So you just have to be paying something. You just have to be showing good faith. And I've ran into this a couple of times with people that I've worked with, some a client that I helped, and also just personally. I had my son had a pretty expensive ER bill a couple of years ago, and I my really close family member is in medical billing, and I said, well, how do I tackle this? And they said, you pay whatever you can when you can, and just try to be regular about it. And I've had on a few occasions had phone calls with hospitals or medical facilities. They say the exact same thing. If you could pay at least $25, we'll leave you alone. um, but what you're doing too, being proactive in fighting them, that is worth doing. Sometimes those charges are wrong. I've actually fought little things, like the pediatrician was charging us for, incorrectly for testing that they were doing on the kids. And I knew, I said, we didn't get a strep test that day. Like, why am I getting charged for any sort of diagnostic thing? And I fought it, and it's gone. So sometimes they make mistakes because they're humans too, and they put codes in wrong, because everything in medical billing is based on codes. So we do want to question it. We want to be curious when it comes to healthcare, because there's a lot of hidden fees and a lot of things we don't expect. So, for example, there's a local practice, a big practice here in our area, that if you go for a well visit, if they ask you any questions about your mental health and you choose to answer those questions, they charge you an extra $45 for your well visit. So your $0 well visit now costs you $45.
Mm.
Had you known they were going to ask you those questions, and maybe you're already paying a psychologist, or you don't have concerns about your mental health, would you have answered the questions?
Mm.
So interesting things like that. So we don't want to panic, we don't want to stress, but we want to be aware. We want to ask questions and say, okay, the doctor might say, we're gonna do this test, and this test. Okay, tell me why. Which of those is the most important? Let's decide, are we really going to do all of these? um, a lot of people have access through their employer to a flexible spending account or health savings account. If you can use an FSA or an HSA to have some tax-free money set aside, that's always a good thing too. But when those bills come in that are just so high and really unexpected, and unfair is a great word. um, I went to, in 2019, I had some very serious health issues. I went to the emergency room twice in 1 week. Once was on a Wednesday and once was on a Saturday. I got the exact same services on both of those days. One bill was 7,000 before insurance, and one was 24,000,
Oof.
because of the day of the week. That's it. I called and fought and said, why are these bills so different? It's exactly the same things. Oh, well, that's a Saturday, we got to pay people more. So that was the answer that their billing
Mm.
department gave me. So I'm not saying don't go to the ER because it's a Saturday. Please go. but that is how complicated and messy our healthcare system is, that we can't predict what those things are going to look like.
Yeah. And the one that I'm fighting, unfortunately, it's not a matter of, oops, she billed wrong. It's a matter of one that you referenced, like that kind of, I'll call it a hidden fee.
Mhm.
But it's like we told you, and it's like, why was it like 2 point font? Where, like I never saw this. It was basically an annual dermatology visit. And because it was at a place that's considered a surgical
Yes.
facility, There
Yes.
is a after this is after the original charge is a couple thousand, but they want me to pay like almost $600. And I'm like, say what now? Because it's
Hmm.
like, I'm sorry, had you literally said to me, and you didn't have to tell me the amount because I supposedly can never tell you that. But if someone said, okay, you're having this typical dermatology appointment here, just an FYI, you could end up paying more, because I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Let's schedule it in a like an office, or let's not
Yeah.
do this then. But I wasn't given that choice. And the actual procedure that I believe triggered that fee, it wasn't just she used I don't know if anyone's familiar, there's like liquid nitrogen when they freeze
Hmm.
something to I wish this is a case where I get riled up because I've already been denied, so I have to appeal again, and I will. But like their answer back is so full of crap. Like she gave a detailed examination. I anyone needs to take a look at my body, and believe me, I'm not saying it's a pretty sight, but I call myself now like a sunken ship. Like I've got barnacles growing, I got all kinds of stuff, and I have fair skin, I have age spots, I have so many things to look at. She sat down and chatted for about 4 minutes. That's valuable 4 minutes. She did not give me a detailed examination. And I said, there's something on my back. All I said was look at it. Before I knew it, she was spraying me. And to your point about, I wish you would simply have said, do you want me to?
Hmm.
She of course in their explanation, oh, she gave a full explanation and got my permission. No, permission is, do you want me to do this? She did not
Right.
say that. She was like, oh, well, this is blah blah blah, it's not dangerous now, but it might be. And she literally started spraying. So unless I spun around and knocked her out, which next time I will, I'm going to bring my boxing gloves. And then she starts spraying a couple of them. I'm like, ooh, ow, ow.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I have a couple more back here. Did I ask you to do that? Because when
Yeah.
she was finished, I said, is that going to be covered? And almost with a laugh. And I know otherwise she was a pleasant person. It's nothing personal, but they need to educate these folks. Have conversations where you actually invite the patient and inform them what could be at stake.
Yeah.
I said, is it covered? She goes with like kind of like a half laugh, like, I don't know. I guess it depends on if your deductible's been met. I'm like, I have a $4,000 deductible and I really only had one other doctor visit this year. So
Yeah.
that would be a no. And then this bill shows up and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was furious. So I'm working on that one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I know you're joking about, the pets, but it is easier to budget for healthcare for your pet. I've done a whole series on this where, and I've written articles on this, that if you want to get a dog or a cat, before you do that, I want you to go to the vet. I want you to ask the vet, how much is the first year of this dog or cat's life going to cost me? What's this going to cost? What's going to happen if I need this? What are the vaccines? And they will give you a full workup estimate of everything it's going to cost. You know exactly what's coming. And I think there's some like confidence in that. We're like, okay, sure, I'll pay that because now I know what it's going to be. I can plan for it. We had a two in 1 year, two very significant pet surgeries, and it's, I don't know, one of them I probably wouldn't have done if I didn't have kids, but the other one I would have done. So we were going to do these surgeries, but before I ever signed on for these surgeries, the veterinarian's office gave me a full workup of every single dollar I was going to pay, and then said, "Would you like to do these surgeries?" And also gave me alternatives if I wasn't going to do these surgeries. One of them was a really bad alternative, so we weren't going to do that. But and so I was able to plan for it. And it was painful. It was financially painful, but I was able to plan for it. And when those bills came in, the actual bills, they were exactly to the penny what they told me it was going to cost. So if our healthcare, if our human healthcare system cared as much about us as the veterinarian system cared about pets, we'd be golden. Sure, I'll budget for your crazy surgery. Just tell me what it's going to cost.
We'd be golden doodle. One thing I will say about that, though, on a serious note, and this is more rhetorical, so you don't even have to respond. And this is, I guess, the Gen X in me, the skeptic in me, and the weirdo in me, because so many people seem to value pets more than people, from what I hear them saying, which is boggles my mind. And from someone who's out in the community and people don't want to slow down in a crosswalk, but I digress. Um, It's funny because when I, as a Gen Xer growing up, we had dogs and we took them to the vet twice a year, maybe. Like I
Mhm.
remember our Siberian Husky, Tasha, she lived to be like 15 years old. And we took her for, I want to say, like a heartworm or something, like once a year, if that. So I don't know if pets have changed so much or if this has become a business. This is the cynic in me because I'm sorry, like she lived to be 15, which is a pretty good life, and that was it. And that was, I
Yeah.
mean, that was back in the day, we took them once a year or something, and now all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, pets don't belong in my home necessarily because I do love dogs and I pet sit for my friends, but like I do worry, like there's part of me that would love to get a rescue. I see those beautiful little faces on Blue Chip. It's not that I
Yeah.
don't love them or don't think they'd be, but in all sincerity, and this can be just rhetorical, like I hear what you're saying about being able to budget, which is nice, but what about people who, like, that's actually a hardship? Because I see people, all kinds of people from every class level who have pets, and I wonder how they can afford it. And that's just a wonder, it's just a
Yeah.
thought. I don't know, because if everyone's spending all this money on, vitamins for, because I mean, I've heard some pretty, I'll call them crazy stories. Other people may not, like, oh no, they need this vitamin because they're chewing on their paws and they're anxious every time they hear a car start. Okay, well, let's take them to Reiki and acupuncture because that's out there too.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
yes, whatever you do, you, everyone who's listening, don't feel free to send me your mail because at least I'll know you're listening. Whatever, that's fine. But I mean, I still say, if you have a family, or yourself, you deserve the best in your life. You've got kids, you've got a spouse or a family. How in the world some of these folks who, like, they don't look, to quote my grandmother, like they have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it
Right.
out. How are they going to afford pet? I mean, I'll use the example of the person across the street. I don't know what they do for the dog, but they don't actually even take the dog out. They open the door and let the dog walk up and down the street. Seriously, that's their
Yeah, this
method
dog
of
sounds terrible.
of pet ownership. It's a small dog that could easily be hit by a car.
Yeah.
They open the door. 20 minutes later, she comes out screaming his name. So, I mean, from the safety of the pet, there's no safety there. From me being annoyed too, the dog shits wherever it wants to shit because that's a lovely way to have a pet. You don't have to worry about any of the responsibility. But
Yep.
like, how it's not, first of all, okay, pet ownership's not meant for everybody. That's a side note, I guess I'm saying. But like, I just wonder, I seriously wonder. And it's like, I joke, but I am serious when I say I don't believe everyone can afford pets, at least not to the degree that I'm hearing about all the pet bills. So I don't know how
Yeah.
they do it. Like I said, that could be more rhetorical because we can't speak for other people, but when I see what looks like people that, like, the way the care of their home or like their car that they barely can run, like I don't know how they're paying for all that stuff, but I don't know.
I mean, I want to pretend this is rhetorical because I could talk about this for days. And if you want to do a whole episode on this, we can. I'm actually very opinionated on this from my coaching experience, but also from my life experience. So I'll be honest with you and all of our listeners. Years ago, when I had first started our debt free journey, um, we had a dog. Her name was Lexi, and she got very sick. She got cancer in her spleen and a few other places. She was a beautiful Wheaten Terrier. She was only 7. Before I had children, she was my whole world. And but when we found out what she needed about about $5,000 surgery, and it was going to buy her 3 to 9 months, somewhere in that ridiculous range. 3 to 9 months of life is what this surgery was going to buy her. And a lot of crying, a lot of praying, and a lot of budgeting later, we didn't do it. It wasn't the right answer. It wasn't the right thing for her, probably in the long run, but it wasn't the right thing for us because we didn't have the money to do it. We had a new baby, we had a new house, we had a ton of debt between cars and loans and lots of stuff that we were working through. We didn't have an emergency fund yet. We had just enough money in a savings account that if we ran out of propane, we could buy more propane. So the answer was we didn't do it. And it was so hard, but it was the right thing. And she lived another week. That was it. She lived a week. It was so painful. So fast forward 10 years, we're in a very different place financially. There's a reason I'm preaching what I preach, because this process works. And we have these cats that I really didn't want, but now they're kind of my children. My son, all he wanted was cats. So we finally caved, got some cats, and they were outdoor cats. And then one of these very sweet outdoor cats had an accident. He fell out of a tree, and it was horrible. Um, Without getting too graphic, his mouth had to be put back together, and he
Oh,
lost
geez.
most of his teeth. Um, and we took him to the vet because my son and I found him, and we got him to the vet, and they did all the emergency stuff. They figured out what he was going to need, and it was a couple of $1,000 surgery. And number one, it was really hard because my 8-year-old at the time is sitting right there with his cat that's like half put together at this point. And the vet said, here's what we can do. If we don't do this, we have to put him down. He cannot survive with this. And we were in a different place, and we had the money. We had an emergency fund, a fully funded emergency fund with a little bit to spare, and we did it. And that cat is now thinks he's my baby, because we had to syringe feed him for like 2 weeks. He For those of you who aren't watching this on YouTube, please go to YouTube right now and I will demonstrate what his face looks like. That's about it. He's just got this slanted face where he looks like he's judging you all the time. But I don't have regrets about that, because it was the right thing to do. We could afford it. And that's the key. Can you afford it? And sometimes you've heard me talk about the word afford when it comes to children. We have to take the emotion out of that word. Either we can afford it or we can't. So when I hear people saying, well, I didn't get the health care I needed, or I didn't pay the mortgage this month because my cat needed A, B, and C, I literally bite holes in my tongue. And it's very hard for me to deal with, because I let a dog die to make sure that I wasn't putting my family further into debt for the wrong reasons. And I love animals, and I do love all of the animals that we've had or have. But we have to make the right decision for the bigger picture. And sometimes it's a hard decision.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for weighing in there now, because and again, I guess it's hard for me to say because we grew up with dogs, but it was a different time. Like when I was a kid, my family had, again, don't tell anyone, an outside dog. I know we're horrible people who deserve to be in hell right now. But I mean, I was born in 71. This dog was by then already like 11, 12, and it was an outdoor dog. That's what people did back then. Look it up, people. But I mean,
Yep,
they did, like,
yep.
he was an outdoor dog, literally. And ever after that, we had other dogs that were, of course, indoor dogs. But I mean, things have changed. I've watched a change and seen a change in my life where dogs now are like, hey, he can drive the car. Why not? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
different mindset that I think for me, and again, we could go off a whole different topic. I'd love to get a psychologist in on this.
Right.
One
We
that
need
could
somebody.
one that could be open-minded and not biased. But like, I think what I see, I'm going to play my little Judge Judy / psychologist hat. Some people who've been really, really hurt by people are like, people are the worst. I'm just going to sit here and stroke my cat. And not in that voice, but that's how I hear it. Because yeah, it's easier to not trust people, right?
Yeah.
If they've hurt you, because let's face it, you can sit there and tell me all the things about your cat and dog and whatever, but they're animals. I know,
Yeah.
shush, Janine, shut up, but they're animals who aren't going to talk back to you. And I mean, I know, yes, everyone thinks their dogs and cats are talking, but you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to tell you
They're only
off. They're
judging.
not going to hurt you. They're not going to leave you. So, of course, they seem more appealing. And I get it. But I guess I get upset when I do see, to your point, what you just said. I see that on Facebook all the time,
Mhm.
and it's like those comments about like, oh, I could have, but I spent this on my cat or my dog. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's responsible. And yes, I'm a hardcore bitch or whatever anyone would think that would be, but I just don't think it's responsible. And again, it's none of my business if I'm not part of their family or in their life. What the hell do I care? But I won't go down the rabbit hole then of when I see like the GoFundMe's after people are like paying for stuff that you can't, if it's not in your budget, then don't like lean on the rest of the world to help you with this. And I do struggle with that because I do see that, yes, you have to have a heart, but at the same time, I think you have to use common sense. You know what I mean?
You do.
So yeah. And it's to your point though, it's not easy. It's not easy, but
Mhm.
like with that surgery you mentioned, let's say you did do it. Like seriously, a couple, like not even a year, and you're gonna
Right.
say 5,000, like, and
Yeah.
who knows if the animal would the poor dog would have like still had some, pain or whatever in
Mhm.
those months. Like really? I mean, and I again, I'm not attached, so I can say that. So that's it's not fair because I'm not attached. But I mean, it's I think, and I see some people with older dogs who don't want to put them down, and it's like, again, I don't want to be cruel, but you've got this dog who's like literally blind,
Yeah.
walking into things and peeing and has to wear a diaper, but you don't want to put the dog down. Oh, I
Right.
think they're having a swell time at 15 and they're peeing
Mhm.
themselves and they can't see. I'm sure life is grand. I mean, I'm not involved emotionally. Yes, Janine's a bitch. Go ahead. Feel free to
No,
say
no, 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 no.
it.
You're not.
No.
You're not. I mean, but sometimes we have to have the hard conversations, and sometimes, my hope is that there's somebody listening right now that's saying, "Oh, I'm not prioritizing properly. Like this, I'm doing that. Like I'm sacrificing my health or my happiness or my goals as a human or my children's goals or my whatever it might be for an animal." And again, if you can, if you have the means, but go do it. But it's also a society thing. We live in a country where pets are coveted and we treat our animals a certain way. This is not the norm all over the world, though. This is, it's very common in a lot of other countries to see outside dogs just be the dogs. My children think that pets go to heaven with their owners, but that other animals, or what they call them, they call them homeless animals, but like
Oh.
the birds and
They're houseless, not
the
homeless. No.
houseless, the bobcat that got killed on the driveway a couple of weeks ago, like they think all those animals go to a separate heaven. Like that's how much like we do put our pets on a pedestal, that my kids think they go to a separate heaven. I did not teach them that in Sunday school. For any of my Sunday school families that are listening, I promise I did not teach the kids this.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting times.
It is. It is. But having these like funny but hard conversations, right before we got on the call tonight, we quickly called um, my sister-in-law and her family because they put their dog down tonight.
Oh,
And I only got to say a quick hello because then I jumped in here. But he's been not doing well for a while. And last time we saw him was Christmas, and they said, this will probably be the last time you see him, and make sure you give him love. And he's really really big and slobbery, so I gave him love from a little bit of a distance, but he's a sweet guy, such a sweet guy. But they knew that his lifespan was ending, that the kind of breed he was and the ailments he was having, that they weren't going to keep making him suffer through life, and in turn having them suffer through the cost of what it was to keep him going and to keep the house up with any messes he was making. So we have to do the hard things sometimes, and you know it's not easy, but
yeah.
we got to keep that big picture. We started this whole conversation tonight talking about, what are our goals? What's important? What's the big picture? How do we keep things in perspective? And really how we take care of our pets, how we take care of our homes, like all those things, they all matter. They all cost money. And that's why budgeting will always be relevant.
Yes, yes. And I do want to say this before we close too. It's like, for anyone listening, like I currently do not have a pet. Like I said, I do pet sit for my friends and stuff. So I could say this a little bit more in a more detached manner, but at the same time, trust me, I don't think I'm above anyone because I make mistakes all the time with, I'm a hypocrite in the sense of like, I know I'm not great with money and I buy things that I quite frankly don't have the budget for. So I understand. So I understand an emotional attachment and why you'd want to, but so yeah, I'm not really judging and I'm certainly not above, although I do still think that people are more valuable than pets. So that one I'm not gonna like. It's crazy that I'd have to be like, hi, could my life be considered more valuable than that terrier's? Because I still do believe that. And
Yeah,
that shouldn't even be a conversation. And yet in this world, I feel that it is this country.
yeah,
But I am saying that I'm far from perfect when it comes to spending how my money ought to be spent.
yeah.
I totally understand making purchases that were not necessary or not in the budget because I do a lot of that. Trust me, I do. So,
Well, and
but
I know you're saying no judgment or anything, but I keep glancing to my side for people watching on YouTube, and it's because there's a dog in the crack of my office door right now, and I do feel like he's judging me quite heavily
aw.
with this conversation.
He's like, don't like the sound of that.
No, no, no.
This is the dog I met, right? You still have him?
I yes, yes.
Yes.
He's and I'll say like
He's sweet.
he's such a good boy. But a couple of years ago he had a tumor and we had the means, we took it out. It was cancer, got took care of that. Since then he's gotten like three or four more.
Mm,
We've decided to let them be because he's older now. And they're just gonna stay and we'll see what happens. But we've made that choice. We're not gonna drop of $2,000 every single time he has a little lump and bump. And that was a hard choice because as you've seen, you've met him and you've seen my family interact with him. I mean, he's part of the family. He's a great guy, but he's
yeah.
still a dog. And
Yeah.
he really is listening. He's gonna make me sleep on the couch.
He is giving you the middle paw right now.
He
I
is.
middle nail of his paw for sure right now. Like, okay, Emily.
Well, just the other day, my brother was visiting and he's petting him and he's like, there's something on him. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Because I didn't want my kids to hear. So I'm like, it's okay.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's fine.
Well, and as we wrap up, it's like you have to think, look at all the facts and try to take emotion out of it sometimes, even though that's difficult and see, especially when it comes to your family, putting your family and yourself, taking care. Don't want to put yourself in a predicament, right? That's,
Right.
6 months down the line where you're like, we can't pay these bills. Okay. Yeah. You want to avoid that stuff. So budgeting is important. So I want to thank Emily. Thank you so much for sharing. As always, you put it in a way that is very easy to understand, to digest, and without and reminding us too about not putting stress or pressure on us because if we're doing something at the sake of our mental wellness, that's not the way to go. So I appreciate all that you've shared.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as always. I love being a guest on the podcast. And I hope someone got something out of this. And it's all just about thinking differently about your money.
Yeah. Totally true. And thank you. If anyone out there though is mad about the pet stuff, you can just send the mail to me.
Yeah,
Leave it
you can
leave
not.
Emily alone.
Or please don't tell my dog.
Don't send any hate emails to Emily. Just send them my way. That's okay. She has a dog and two cats. I'm the one that only has dust bunnies, so I'm the one you want to go after. Um, well, thank you again, and I want to say thank you to my listeners. I am excited as I've said the past few weeks. It's been a little bit of a challenge getting in people's schedules this year, just because everyone's been so busy. But I do have my friend Christine Souza, who is I'll say up the line. She's not just up the line, she's up in a different state. She's in upstate New York. She is someone who I've had on the podcast twice before. She just finished and is just about to publish a book. And so I'm going to have her on and we're going to catch up and chat, which will be really nice. And a couple other folks that we're just trying to line up the schedule, hopefully, because February is Heart Month. I'm working on getting a guest from the American Heart Association and hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe even a cardiologist. And God love person when I get her. I'll be like, and hey, here's the results of my stress test and electrocardiogram. What does this mean? No, I'll try to make it not all about me, but in all sincerity, it is important for women to pay attention to their heart health because, hey, we didn't have issues with heart health until just about 5 or 6 years ago, according to the research. And suddenly they're like, wait a minute. Women have different symptoms when they're about to have a heart attack. Who knew? We didn't do the research. And now we're finally doing it. So it is important to talk about it. So I hope you will tune in. Thank you for tuning in now. If you are interested in supporting this content, as Emily does, or Gabby of Reinvented Threads, and you'd like to be a sponsor, believe me, as I say, it is more affordable than you think. If you buy your coffee out every day, you can afford to sponsor this podcast. And we can always work within your budget because budgeting is important, as you just heard. But you know what? If you simply don't have the cash, the money, that's fine. You don't want to make the investment because it's not feasible right now. You know how else you can help? You can help by sharing this podcast. Tell a friend, a foe, tell anyone you know, share a link to an episode that you enjoyed. Tell them to tune in and share it on your social media. Write a review, rate the podcast on Apple or Spotify. That's always appreciated. So as I say every week, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.